Welcome back to the Kate and Kurt Show at our world headquarters here in Stafford Springs. Today's lesson is going to be an overview of the geography of the town of Stafford. I found out hockey's a very violent game recently, but I'll try not to be too sinister. First, this is just a quick schematic overview. Perhaps you best know the roads. If we put 190 in here running across the southern part of Stafford, that'll be 190. 32 sort of divides it in the middle, coming down from the north here, connecting with 190 in the village, and then continuing out. These are the major state roads. 319, 140, and the other one is Route 19. Something like that. Oh yes, Route 30 in West Stafford here. Of course, this is north, south, east, west. And this is 32. And this is 30. The most significant part geographically, it seems to me, are our hills. And just roughly, there are 6 what I call ridges running north and south. We start in the east, and we have a big ridge. Whoops. We'll mark it like that. I'm not sure if it goes down there. And this consists of 2 hills on top of the ridge, known as Burley here and Hedgehog at this point. The next hill going east we see is what I call Stafford Street. It continues to Village Hill as you go south, and of course here you'd go down into the village of Staffordville. So we call this Stafford Street. Go down again to a valley. The next hill I call Sunset Ridge, simply because there is a road there that's named Sunset Ridge. And very easy to see the very steep ledges behind the stores in Stafford Springs, which is here. The next hill we have, it's called Crow Hill, at least in part, comes down someone like this. So that'll be Crow. The next hill, about the same rough configuration, because Hamden Road goes directly up it, like this, north. You can see the steepness, of course, if you ever travel this curve at the bottom. We call that Hamden. The next hill, perhaps the most well-known, is Chestnut Hill. I'm not sure it goes down there. I'm not sure where it ends there as well. That's Chestnut. So you can see very simply that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ridges, perhaps not that equidistant apart, that define our town. Of course, created maybe by the glaciers that was here about a mile high in Stafford that gouged this out maybe a short 10,000 years ago. There are 2 other hills you might notice. As you're driving into West Stafford, you do see this prominent hill here, in some places called Murray Hill, M-U-R-R-Y, as well as a long ridge in the southern part of town known as Tollin Hill. I suppose you could argue there are 5. Stafford Street, of course, goes over to Village Hill. Now, I contend that although the geography seems insignificant these days, in colonial days it defined what everyone did. First, of course, the flatness. The first people came to farmers, they wanted good farmland, and part of that would be a flat surface. There aren't many flat surfaces, but interesting enough, on Stafford Street, it's very flat in the top, which is why they settled there. And you'll notice the second big settlement, West Stafford, is flat also in many spots, if you've traveled up there. But, of course, major industry in town was textiles, and this was caused by the streams and rivers we have. Now, if you have these hills, obviously between the hills, it's called a valley. And in the valley there are streams. If we start in the east again, you perhaps are familiar with Roaring Brook, which flows south this way. I believe on this brook, I think, is the reservoir many of the people in Stafford Springs get their water from, the water company. The next stream, one of our largest ones, probably starts up in State Line Pond, coming down, and then State Line Brook comes into Stafford Lake here. And then from here we have Furnace Brook, which runs south down into the village of Stafford Springs, down the River Road. The next valley in the middle of town, interesting enough, is called Middle River. And it comes down here. Market's Pond is here. It comes down. That is right. And flows through the center of Stafford Springs into Furnace Brook, where at this joint shore it changes its name, of course, to the Willimantic River, which is this part. The next valley, between Crow and Hamden, we have a small brook called Diamond Ledge, which comes down like this, about here. The next, all flowing south, not that all do. In the next valley between Chestnut and Hamden, we have 2 brooks, Patton and Ellis, coming together. Let me see, how does that work? Together, probably ending about here. Of course, they all end in the Atlantic Ocean. But we have another interesting brook, Crystal Lake Brook, coming out of Crystal Lake, a small portion of which is in Stafford. This diagram is a little out of proportion. It should be a little more north-south than east-west. It's about 10 miles east-west and 6 miles north-south. Anyway, out of this Crystal Lake flows Crystal Lake Brook, which, if you're crossing the road right here, you'll see a sign that says Crystal Lake Brook. goes around the West Stafford Congregational Church, and then crosses the state line, the state road again, 190. Again, there's a sign, Crystal Lake Brook here and Crystal Lake Brook here, and then turns, and where it meets Diamond Ledge Brook, it changed its name again to Edson, E-D-S-O-N. And Edson takes this water all the way to the Middle River right here. So, interestingly, you see that all the water flows out of Stafford in two spots. Either all of this goes into the Middle River, into the Willimantic, flows to the shore that way, or Roaring Brook goes into Willimantic River down where 32 intersects with 84. Of course, there are many ponds. The steepness of these valleys made it easy for them to dam. Furnace Brook, of course, well, some are gone now, but you have Johnson's and Warren's, and Glenville, Hydeville. There was another one just south of, north of Colburn Road there, and of course Stafford Lake, all of which ran mills. There's a mill, of course, at Orchardville as well. And there are others. And of course, we've left out many of the smaller streams. Our last quiz question concerned the Stafford Springs Hotel. And the question was, what year did it burn? And the answer is 1959. However, we haven't found someone who came up with the answer yet. Today's quiz question concerns the highest point in the town of Stafford. And a hint is, it is one of the hills that I mentioned.